All right, good people. Good morning. Obviously, this is the first time we had to meet at 7:20. So, um, way to go for being here on time. And as I'm taking attendance here, I'm going to go ahead and already start my screen share. Got a quick question for you. Go ahead and privately send your responses to me. See if you can answer the question off the top of your head. Probably take about 90 seconds or so to do this. So. All right. The question is, nope, not that one. Here we go. Name the five largest religions in order from largest to smallest. Largest religions in the world. So, guys, send it to me in a chat privately. See how many you can get. All right, we've got some decent guesses here, but no one. Let's see. The person who is most correct is. Well, nobody got anything after this top two. Canaan was closer. So today we get to dispel some myths here for sure. Plus maybe get closer. We're not counting atheism because Chinese religion typically gets counted as atheism. Here's some decent guesses. Gas still a little off. All right, so I'll go ahead and put the correct answers in the chat function for everybody. Oh, we got Tim joining us. For you guys all to see. So it goes Christianity, over 2 billion. Then it goes Islam with close to like 1.5 billion. And it's definitely Hinduism, because most of the Indian subcontinent is either Hindu or Muslim. Then it goes Buddhism with about, 400 plus some change million. And then lastly, nobody got this right because you guys probably have not heard of it. And if you have, not much. Sikhism is 5. Sikhism is an ancient Indian religion that shares commonalities with Hinduism, but doesn't believe in the caste system. So, all right. Just wanted to get you guys' brains going a little bit. So, food for thought. We got people still joining here, of course. All right. So, I think I'm going to end up having to break these notes up over Tuesday, Thursday, just because of the issue with the Zoom thing tomorrow. So, what I need you guys to do is, again, if you don't like take notes, just download this off of the modules, week number 11. And if you If you'd rather just write down the notes, that's up to you as well. So somebody just asked what thing. So if you remember right, tomorrow teachers are all going to have just assignments up on their screens for you guys to complete, because we've got all day meetings tomorrow over how to do hybrid learning. Woohoo. All right, so we're going to move on. So today we're taking a look at the rise and spread of this, like I said, the world's second largest religion, with the idea that we're trying to understand how Islam has a lot of commonalities to Christianity and Judaism, but yet is also distinct religion as well. I've gotten this question from a few different people. Do you have to finish all the assignments by the normal class period? I don't know. That's probably up to your teacher. Okay. I know for me, you guys will have an intro due, and then I'll have one other thing for you to get done during the class period. That would be like 20, 25 minutes long. All right. We're going to move on here. All right. So Islam was created or developed over time in what's called the Arabian Desert. So if you guys look on your screen or on my screen here, you're going to see camels, and you're going to see like in basically tents that were somewhat fashioned out of leather, whatever they could find. And so the people that lived on the Arabian Desert were known as Bedouins. And Bedouins are nomadic desert dwellers. That means that they still move from place to place. And primarily because, if you can tell, there's a lack of vegetation there. They did not farm. They weren't into agriculture like every single other civilization we've talked about so far. Okay, instead, they traded camels and goats, like I said, moving around looking for resources. Okay, so these Bedouins would move around from oasis town to oasis town. You guys have heard of oasis before. That's a stop in the desert that is typically where there's a well, meaning that they found access to underground water. So here you can see a modern day oasis in the middle of the desert. If you've ever driven from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, there are 3 or 4 oasis towns you'll find that have like farming and a decent population. And then you'll drive 5 miles outside the city and it's again ghost town and desert-like. Okay. So the reason why these desert dwellers would need to get to these oasis towns was for water and resources. Now, the people that lived on the Arabian Peninsula were very different than the people that lived in the Roman Empire, the Gupta or Mauryan empires in Egypt or Kush or Nubia or like I said, the Indian civilization of Persia, which was kind of around it. But they were mostly left on their own because they lived such different lifestyles and there wasn't a lot of resources. So none of these major civilizations wanted to take them over. Okay. So they were organized as such. Instead of having like a set social structure or government, they were organized by families first. So like just like the original people that walked the earth, then into clans, then lastly into tribes. And it was the tribes that were kind of the largest political organization on the peninsula. I believe there were 12 tribes. Don't hold me to that. It's early for me too. But you first associate yourself with your family, then your clan, then your tribe. And disputes were taken care of between these people known as sheikhs. These are tribal leaders. And the sheikhs that were the elder people that had managed to live long enough to go through war. And war was very, very common in pre-Islamic Arabia. Okay, if you guys don't know where Arabia is, I'm talking about the Middle East, like where Saudi Arabia is today, UAE, Yemen, Oman, Qatar, Jordan is close to this, a little bit of Iraq. Okay, so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. All right, so these clans and then these tribes fought almost incessantly, okay, over who got to control the watering grounds and who got to control the oases. And so there became these inter-clan rivalries, and there became this rivalries between tribes, see who got to control these towns. And then as these wars, and I wouldn't call them more wars, I'd call them more like skirmishes, became more and more common. These towns started to grow because more people started to go there for safety. And so you start to see a rise in population, and you start to slowly see them being added to the trade route, which existed between North Africa with Egypt, and then with the Roman Empire, and then all the way over to China. And that trade route was known as the Silk Trade Route. Exactly. All right. So, two oasis towns that grow up into, or turn into major cities, and are to this day, are Mecca and Medina. Okay, you've probably heard of the city of Mecca before, because that's where followers of Islam, known as Muslims, are called to go once in their lifetime. It's part of their faith. Okay, but you can see a picture here of the great mosque in Mecca. And it was at Mecca where there was a series of religious shrines in a park. And in this park was also the Kaaba, which was in their polytheistic set of gods. So they believed in many gods. The Kaaba was the most famous shrine for these Bedouin traders. And so if you made a stop to Mecca, you had to go to this park, which held all these different religious shrines, and you had to make a sacrifice. Sacrifice could be in like money, like shekels. Sacrifices could be in animals. But whoever controlled the Kaaba and the shrines around it made the most money and could tax the most. And so there were shrines to Christianity there, even Judaism, Zoroastrianism of the Persians, Hinduism, Buddhism, and a lot of the different local gods, Egyptian gods, that developed, all had a kind of an area in this park. So every trader who came through here would make a contribution. And so Mecca became very much more, what do you call, worldly, like larger than these other trading towns. Medina had some more agriculture, but also was an oasis town. You can see the mosque at Medina today. It's absolutely huge as well. And that's important to the city of, or the story of the rise of Muhammad. Canaan asked, is the black stone still there at the Kaaba? Correct, it is. We'll take a look at that here in a second. Okay, some of the things to think about. So we've talked about a lot of civilizations, like old civilizations so far. But we haven't so much talked about any civilization where women were not inferior to men. But before Islam grew in Arabia, women were seen as very important. They could trade. They could be merchants. They did not have to be secluded in the house. They did not have to wear veils. They could participate in clan councils. We know this because the dowry, that's the payment that is made by the, now traditionally, the women's family to the man's family, so that he and his new wife has somewhere to live. That was actually paid for by the husband. And women were allowed multiple husbands. Now, how does this change after Islam grows? Well, we'll talk about it. But as Islam grows over a 300-400 year period, women start to lose almost all of their rights. It became common for Islamic men to have concubines. Those were women who that they could have sex with, and they would stay in a separate part of the house. And women couldn't go out in public showing any kind of skin at all. And they lost all of their rights. So that's why I wanted to point out, before Muhammad created Islam, women had a lot of power. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Prophet Muhammad. All right, and Muhammad is a very important figure in Islamic history. And so a lot of times, if you're with a Muslim and you say the word Muhammad, I mean, it can mean, if you're talking about the prophet, you would say all praise his name, because you'd be talking about the prophet. Okay, and so he was born in 570. He was born to the Quraysh tribe. He was not born to the Umayyad tribe, which controlled Mecca. All right, so he wasn't part of the most powerful people. And he was raised by his uncle because his parents died at a young age. And when he was raised by his uncle took him on a caravan trade route to Syria, which that's north, and that's where he went through Jerusalem and Damascus. These two cities had been heavily Christianized during their time as part of the Roman Empire. And so he learned a lot about Christianity and Judaism. He saw how people behaved when they followed one God versus many gods. That's going to shape his view on life. Okay, as he got a little bit older, he married a very wealthy woman named Khadijah. Okay, if you're not taking notes, you may want to highlight this if it's on your screen. Okay, Khadijah allowed him to live the life that he wanted to live. Okay, as a kind of a wealthy trader, and he didn't have to worry about money. And so he was able to live this kind of what we call upper class lifestyle, and that allows him to kind of experience the when I say like the worldly pleasures of being rich. And because of that, he's going to start finding that like material wealth and like trying to gain all this money through trade is not actually going to help. It actually creates what's called inequality. I think you guys know what that means, like a gap between the rich and the poor. And so in order to solve that, he goes out into the hills around Mecca and he starts to meditate. Most of you have, maybe you've meditated before. You meditate to try to get your brain to be at peace and figure out what you're thinking. So Muhammad goes out into the hills where like homeless people lived and people who had no jobs. And it's there that the angel Gabriel, the same angel Gabriel that came to Mother Mary and told Mother Mary that she'd be receiving a child who was known as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, came to Muhammad and said that you need to get rid of these earthly desires and pleasures, and you need to worship the one true God, and that is God. Okay, so you need to worship one God, God. Now, I can see some of your faces. You're going, Mr. Brunette, it's not called God, it's called something else. No, it's actually not. It's called God. God is God. God is God. Now, how do you say God in German? Gott. How do you say God in Arabic? Allah. Okay, so you probably were taught in middle school that it was called Allah. Allah just means God, just like God means God, or Gott in German means God. Okay, so it's here that he starts to gain some followers, and he starts to kind of preach this message that you need to go back to a more simple life where you're worshiping one God. And again, he had experience with this on his travels. Okay. We'll talk about the Quran here in a little bit, but the people who came to follow him were known as Muslims. Okay. This definition, I promise you want to jot down. Muslims are those who submit. Okay. Those who submit to one God, Allah. If you are submitting to God or submission to this God is known as Islam. So people like in the chat box, when I went and looked at it, when you guys first put it in, people were using these words very incorrectly. Islam means submission to God. Muslims mean those who submit to God. Okay, so Islam is the religion. A Muslim is a follower of Islam. So back to the story on the right-hand side. He starts to gain all these crowds as he's preaching and kind of telling people about how they need to submit to God. And so the tribe that controlled Mecca, known as the Umayyad tribe, that's an important one, saw Islam as a major threat to gaining tax dollars and making the trade money and the money they made off the Kaaba. This shrine and this religious park where everyone would pay money to. And so Muhammad at knife point, meaning he is actually kidnapped and he's about to have his neck split and again essentially be assassinated. His closest followers save him and they flee about 60 miles at night to the city of Medina. Okay, that flight, you can look on a map where Mecca is on the south. It's got the red dot. You go up north or up on the map about 60 miles, you'll see the city of Medina. And so, again, being chased by the Umayyad tribe, Muhammad and his closest followers flee from Mecca to Yathrib, or what's known as Medina today. And that was in the year 620 CE. Traditionally, that's known as the first year on the Islamic calendar. Okay, so Muslims date the world as 620 being the first year, and they don't use BC or AD. Okay, now when he gets to Yathrib, or what's known as Medina, he quickly gains favor with the leaders there by settling disputes and acting as kind of a lawyer. And the people that followed him start to pass the message on as well that you need to follow the one true God. And he married 2 or 3 of the local leaders, their daughters. And so I know that seems weird to have many wives, okay, or many husbands, but at this time, it was commonplace. And it's from there then that the his own tribe, the Quraysh tribe, tried to come and assassinate him. And he ends up winning over the Quraysh and over the Umayyad. And 10,000 of his followers march back to Mecca, okay, 9 years later. And they will take over the Kaaba, and they will really officially start this religion known as Islam. Okay. All right. So what does this mean then? It's going to spread inside of Arabia, like these desert dwellers, a little bit slower, but it's going to lead them to the first time that Arabia, so these Bedouin desert fighters and dwellers, first time that they ever had one faith and one thing to be proud of. Okay. I call it one Arab monotheistic faith. And so the first time now, this is going to give them a way to be organized, and they're going to come flying out of Arabia, and they're going to invade Europe, in 3 different areas. They're going to take over almost all of the Middle East, Persia, and India, and spread into Indonesia, and spread into almost all of North Africa. Okay, so this isn't some like little thing that happens in world history. It's absolutely huge. And like I said to you earlier, the fact that it had 2, or it's the second largest religion in the world today, and the fastest growing, shows you that it was pretty important here. Now, there's a few things I wanted to show you guys. Why this does this? I need to get rid of this dumb transition. Sorry. Okay, so here, this is kind of interesting. If you've never seen this, I was doing a little research on this probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I stumbled upon it, and it makes sense. Okay, so if you ever heard of the prophet Abraham, if you remember, he was the one that got the 3-fold promise from God, saying that the Jews and his followers and his kids would gain the promised land known as Israel. They would be as numerous as the stars, and they'd be the King of Kings. Okay, and so that was with his main wife, Sarah. Okay, who had their first child, Isaac. Took them a long time. She was over 100 years old. And then Isaac had 2 children, Jacob and Esau. Jacob stole the birthright from Esau, if you remember right. And Jacob, then from him comes the 12 tribes of Israel, which then from the tribe of David comes Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So you can trace Jesus's genealogy all the way back to Abraham. Now, here's the part no one really ever talks about. Take a look at this part of the screen now. Some of you may have heard this in, in middle school. I doubt it, maybe. Okay, but Abraham, the prophet, had a illegitimate maidservant who he took and had sex with because he wanted a child very badly, and his wife, Sarah, could not provide child. So when he did that, they had a male son who was technically the firstborn son and would have gotten the birthright. But God said that was bad, and that was Ishmael. Okay? And so Ishmael was told with Hagar, who was his maidservant, to go wander the desert. And they were kicked out of the house. And so they wandered the desert to the point where they almost died looking for water. And it was said that they found this well, this water that God provided for them in the desert. Okay, then it was, if you see, then from Ishmael came the 12 Arabian tribes that we were talking about, the Umayyad and the Quraysh being one. And so Muhammad can trace his line back through Abraham as well. Does everyone understand that? That's the confusing part here. Okay, so again, the prophet Muhammad can trace his line back to Abraham just like Jesus Christ can. Now, Muslims believe that in these prophets. So you had the first man according to Muslims. Then you had Noah. Then Abraham came after Noah. Noah, built the ark, saved the world. And then you had Moses who came down and brought the 10 Commandments. Then you had this prophet named Jesus Christ. And then the final revelation, okay? So prophets are just people who bring down messages from God. The final revelation came to the prophet Muhammad, and he is the final revelation of God's word to Muslims, okay? They don't believe that there are other prophets or people that are speaking on behalf of God. So you only pray to Muhammad and God, Allah, okay? So things to think about then in Islam. This is what a lot of people don't realize, is that Muslims believe that Christians and Jews' revelations are valid, but the final instructions came down from God to the Prophet Muhammad, okay? And instead of praying to different prophets or different people, the only people you pray to are Muhammad and God. Direct relationship with God. Okay. Whereas if you've ever heard of Catholicism, you can pray to the Pope is supposed to bring down messages from God to tell you. He's an intermediary between God and man. In between God and man. Okay. There is no in between God and man in Islam. Okay. And so the way to practice then was to follow what is known as the 5 pillars. Okay. The sayings of Muhammad were put down and recorded after he died. That's important. After he died by his wives and his daughters, 114 chapters are considered like the what's called the canon, or like the actual chosen chapters. And a lot of it is recorded in Arabesque, which is on your, I believe it's on your reading guide this week. Okay, you can see Arabesque is this calligraphy style of artistic writing, calligraphy, and mixes in geometric shapes. And so that's how the Quran was recorded. That's in Arabic. And there were a lot of other writings and things that Muhammad said that, or people said that he said, that were not included. Those are called the hadiths. And that's where people get confused, because there's some hadiths that aren't really true, that people think like, oh, if you die, in the name of Muhammad or Allah, you get to go sleep with 60 virgins in heaven. And that again was passed down over time and then later recorded as not considered part of their holy book. All right. What I'm going to do for you guys here is we got 35 minutes in. That's not bad. I'm going to give you guys about 15 minutes to work on your intro, which is due tomorrow. Okay. And then we'll pick up on this Thursday, okay, where we'll talk about how it's spread in the 5 pillars. You can see Kanan was asking about the Kaaba. This is what it looks like today. So we'll look a little bit more at this stuff on Thursday, okay? So I know I'm not trying to go crazy on the first day. We have a 50-minute class and you guys are up at 7:20. So like I said, work on your intro. I went over probably half of it at least. And if not, stand up, take a break, walk around a little bit. And I will see you. Tomorrow, I'll have an assignment posted for you guys. It'll be very self-explanatory and probably take you like 20, 25 minutes. Make sure the intro is turned in and done on time, okay? Told you guys, if it's not done on time, it's going to be points off. All right, does anybody have any questions for me? Are Islam, Christianity, and Judaism similar? Who do they all trace their roots back to? One person. Start. What's that?
Adam?
Adam or Abraham? One God, Abraham, bingo. Good. All right, so that's one of the reasons why they are called Abrahamic religions, because they all trace their roots back through the prophet Abraham. Okay, good job, first period. And if you're just joining on like Kennedy, go back through and take a look on this on your own. It is on Canvas. And you guys got 14 minutes to get your stuff. Take his head, rip out a handful of questions that I went over on the intro, so you get that done. All right. See you guys. Be good.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.